Hello again, and welcome to Safe Kids, Sane Parents, the Family Safety Podcast. I'm Jason Brick. With me, as always, is Richard Hubbard, and we have a special guest today, John Riddle.
How you doing, guys?
I met John at a martial arts event down in California a few years back where he had come to speak on the topic of situational awareness. And at the time, because John is a legitimately world-famous expert in firearms and home self-defense, everybody kind of hijacked that presentation to ask about how to use guns in home defense. But I was fortunate enough to grab John afterwards and say, hey, man, I was really hoping to hear about situational awareness. And then John geeked out at me about situational awareness for 2 hours. And it could have been 6, but we were in LA, and I was doing Berkeley the next morning, and I had to get in my car. But John is the best. There are probably people who are better at situational awareness out there in the world, folks who are walking point daily in Iraq, for example. But I haven't met somebody who has systematized teaching it to other people better than John has. And so we're really fortunate to have him on the show today.
Thank you, man.
John, could you tell us a little bit about how you got that way?
Well, how did I get that way? Growing up, I lived in a big city. I lived in, like we talked about earlier, I grew up, was born and raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And that was a starting point for me there, you know, because I was getting into a little bit of trouble up there when I was going through high school. But really when it started was after I got out of the military, I went right into law enforcement. And when I got into law enforcement as a police officer out on the street, situational awareness really keeps you alive. You know, it's in your daily dealings and business on the street, it's going to keep you alive out there. I took more of an interest in it as my years on the police department got longer. I started to say to myself, you know, you start to get a little older, and the situational awareness has to be a little bit more keen. Okay, so what I did was I started reading up on things. What really set me off on it was one evening, or early morning hours, I should say. I was working as a training officer with a young brand new police officer. He was getting ready to graduate and go out on his own on the street. And we ran into a gentleman at about 2 o'clock in the morning. And when he was my rookie police officer with another seasoned police officer, we're talking to this individual, I noticed the body language on this person and his eye contact with the seasoned officer's handgun that was still in his holster. I noticed a couple of things that kind of gave me that light bulb moment, so to speak. And I came up behind the individual. He didn't see me approach him. And I just put my hand on his shoulder, and I said, how you doing tonight, partner? And as I put my hand on his shoulder, I rubbed my other hand across his waistband and pulled out a 6-inch chrome loaded .357 Magnum. My intuition was just something that when that eye contact from him was being made to that other officer's handgun, it said, do something. You know, my young officer didn't pick up on it. Wasn't his fault. He was new. The other officer was in the midst of telling this guy what he was going to do if this guy didn't do what he was supposed to do, and he wasn't really paying attention. And I was kind of standing outside the bubble, so to speak, so I could see the whole big picture. And when I saw the eye contact being made to this officer's handgun, I had to do something. Something told me, make the move, do it. And after that, I actually wrote an article on that for Police Magazine. And that was the first article I had ever written. And it got published in the magazine. And then after that, I read a lot of books. I started studying body language a little bit more, being aware of my the situations going on around me in shopping malls and in my personal life. And I started making it a personal study. And when I started to see that I could detect things a little bit better than the average person, I thought the average person really needs this. So I started putting it into my self-defense programs.
Excellent.
And that's how it got started.
Outstanding. And it's such an important thing. You know, you talked about, I like that you brought up intuition, which was how you expressed how you knew to intervene in that situation with those two officers who were younger than you. And that gets right to Gavin de Becker's book, The Gift of Fear, where he's talking about intuition is this sum of all these tiny things that you notice but don't notice that you notice. And it seems like a lot of what you've been doing, you know, what you've been accumulating is ways to notice what you're noticing so you can explain them to other people.
Absolutely.
Would that be accurate?
Yeah, no, you hit that right on the head. You know, and it's when I talk to people, I use the word intuition or gut feeling. I'm walking down the street and I want to cut through the alleyway because it's a shortcut to my vehicle. You know how many people I've interviewed in hospital beds? I knew I shouldn't have gone down that alleyway to take the shortcut, but I just did it. I knew I shouldn't have done it. Something told me I shouldn't have been there, but I went anyway. And then they wind up in a bad situation.
Mm.
I tell my people, I tell my students, and anybody else I talk to, no matter, it doesn't matter what religion or how religious you may be, somebody's sitting on your shoulder and they're telling you, don't do that, don't go there, and you better listen to them because that's your intuition, that's your gut feeling that is saying, hey, otherwise there's going to be a problem. We have to learn, we have to understand that when we have this feeling, we have to listen to it because it will save us in the long run.
So there's almost two levels of awareness there. There's awareness, and then there's awareness of your awareness, a willingness to listen to that, and to be inconvenienced or maybe be embarrassed because you listen to that gut feeling, to that shoulder angel. Now, Richard, you've had some formal awareness training as well. What insights has that brought in?
Yeah, I have a couple questions for John too that are just going to kind of segue through this. So please, John, feel free to jump in if I say something that you want to, elaborate upon. Much of my awareness training is through the practice of meditation, and then bringing that cultivation of awareness into our self-defense training environment. I've got a number of different tools and techniques that I've used over the years and that I've refined over the years that I like. But I also, I'm very interested, because this is the first time that I've met you, in maybe you laying out a bigger picture for how you train your students in awareness. Everybody here has training. Many of the people who are going to be listening to us also have training. Some of the people are not, but I've been through many of the big courses that are out there in the marketplace. I've been through Tony Blauer's PDR. I've trained with Rory Miller. I've been through Damian Ross's program. I've been through Jim Wagner's program back in the day. I've done some classes at Sig Sauer Academy. So I have a wide number of possibilities in terms of the training environment and how different modalities function in order to actually train people to do these things. So I was wondering, John, if you could tell me a little bit about what exactly do you teach people? What are some of the principles and some of the pedagogical techniques that you use in order to have people work this into the training environment?
Sure, and like I said, a lot of my background in this comes from actual real-world experience with my law enforcement background. When I worked in the vice division of law in my agency, we would go out and we would do surveillance on different homes, different houses that we were getting ready to send a SWAT team in on. I was also with the SWAT team, so I had to have I had to understand that I was sitting in a vehicle in a neighborhood that I wasn't really wanted in. So I had to have a 360-degree vision of things going on around me at all times. You know, and just being aware of the atmosphere that I was in, and just getting that feel, and being really just being in it, just getting in it, and understanding that feel, learning that feel as I went on. Now, Colonel Jeff Cooper has written the Color Codes of Awareness. And, you know, when I talk to my people about that, and we talk about the first color code is the white color code. White color code is I'm very relaxed. Like right now, I'm sitting here talking to you. I'm very relaxed. I'm drinking a bottle of water. We can be at home watching television, and everything is good. Now, when I stepped outside of my home and I'm going out to my vehicle, as I step outside the house, I lock the front door, and my head now starts to turn and look both ways as I walk down the pathway to my vehicle. And I want to be aware of my surroundings when I'm getting in it. Look at when we're driving down the street. Okay, you're driving on a freeway, you're driving in town, and there's stop signs and traffic signals that we have to be aware of before we go through those intersections. So what do? We naturally look right and left, or left and right, and to be aware of what's going on around us. We need to use this same type of awareness level in our daily lives. Moving back and forth, continuously having your head on a swivel. When I say that, I'm not talking about paranoia. Okay, a lot of people, they listen to that and they say, well, you know, it sounds like you're creeping around, you know, from point A to point B, and it's like, you know, yeah, I've been accused of that sometimes, but you know, it's a thing where if you just have your head, like we used to say in SWAT, you have to have your head on a swivel. You have to be looking back and forth and be aware of it at all times. Then that's condition yellow. That you're in condition yellow at that point. And yes, I've been through Tony's course. I haven't been through his PDR course. I've been through his SPEAR courses, his close quarter combatives courses. You know, and I've been through several different types of vice, you know, undercover type courses where I learned a lot on situational awareness. And, you know, being in that yellow mode is just being aware of your surroundings, but still being relaxed. And then we get into an orange mode, where the color code of orange, it lights us up a little bit. When we get that feeling, when that little awareness angel shoots up on your shoulder and says, "Don't go there," okay, the hair on the back of your neck may stand up, and you know that feeling you get. That's orange, and that highlights us, and now we become extra aware of our surroundings and things that may be going on. We become more alert of people that are walking around us and things that are happening. And then the color code of red is something happens, we see it, we recognize it, and then we have to make a decision as to what we're going to do. Is it going to be a fight or flight situation? And we have to make our mind up at that point as to what are we going to do. If we have that chance, I'm not a person who says never run. Okay? If you can run, if you can escape a bad situation, do so. You know, as we say, live to fight another day.
And that's especially important for parents. Yeah, for
absolutely.
People with kids. Yeah.
Absolutely, you know, and if you can get away, get away. But if you're pushed to the point of not being able to escape, or you're in a place where you can't get out of it, then you have to make that decision that I have to fight. I have to fight for my life maybe at this point. And at that point, I always say, you know, what plan do you have to fight for your life? Do you train? Are you trained in anything? Do you take care of yourself? Are you fit? Do you train in any type of self-defense or martial art? You know, and so I combine all of this together. You You know, and then we talk about the code black, which you don't hear too much of, but it's somebody who goes into a total blackout. Total fear envelops them, and they go basically to like a fetal type position, and they give up. You know, and why does that happen? We have a total shutdown of the body from fear, and we don't have anything to fall back on for our defensive mechanism. You understand? But yeah, I learned a lot. A lot of my background comes from, yes, I trained under Tony for a little bit. I've been to several schools for working undercover, learning how to blend in and how to make my way around from point A to point B, and then through my 16 years on our SWAT team, and having to be able to have situational awareness, because most of the time I drew the short straw and I went in the door first, so I had to have that awareness level sky high.
So with the Cooper color codes, where I think a lot of parents especially, but people in general, where the mistakes come is in the transitions. And for high testosterone athletic men like all three of us, there's that temptation in the transition where you see a condition orange and the shoulder devil shows up and has watched too many action movies, and you feel compulsed to, I'm not afraid, and you walk right towards it instead of going back indoors or going the other direction or crossing the street, where you willingly transition from code orange to code red, when what you should do is get to yellow as quickly as possible. And I think that's probably the simplest transition to fix, because it really is just putting your testosterone in the back pocket and realize there are more important things than the size of your unit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's funny because I just had that discussion the other night in my class, and it's, we don't want to be chest bumping out there, because we don't know who we're chest bumping with. We don't know who we're dealing with out there on the street. Jason, I've never seen you walk around with a placard on your chest that says, I train in the martial arts, or I don't walk around with anything that says I'm continuously armed with a handgun or a knife. So we don't know who we're dealing with out there. So yeah. Yes, you're absolutely right. The transition from orange to yellow, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with, if I see something that looks dangerous to me as I'm walking down the street, to walk across the street to avoid it, or turn around and go the other way.
Yeah. And again, this is especially true when you are a parent, where it's not just you that could die there, but it's a father for your kids or a wife for your kids. It's a provider of income for your family. Or if you're traveling with your family, you got your kids. You got a 5-year-old on your shoulders and a 15-year-old there. To have your shoulder devil and testosterone tell you to approach a situation that looks dangerous and to listen to that, that's a mistake that happens a lot. And I think one thing that also happens, and Richard, you can back me up or tell me I'm full of it on this, is there's this very specific kind of dad idiocy when you travel, where you got to go see Big Ben. And damn it, we're late. And damn it, we spent $100 on this already today, and damn it, we're going to see Big Ben. And if there's a code orange situation developing between us and Big Ben, we're going to just march right through that with our whole family. Because damn it, we're going to see Big Ben.
Sure. And that goes to something that I spoke about on one of the other episodes, when I said, when you're traveling, your issues aren't other people's problems.
Yeah.
And this is often conflict is created with this idea that, now because we can't get to Big Ben, it's going to be somebody else's job to listen to us and get us there or help us out, even if it's not their job. There's a lot of potential conflict that can evolve in those sort of situations. So it's a really great example of exactly that. And I think, and that goes to, when we're frustrated, when our expectations aren't being met, we're feeling like our needs aren't met, we tend to become angry and irrational. And if we're behaving in a way that is angry and irrational, or if our behavior is making other people around us angry and irrational. It's a frustration aggression hypothesis. So everybody's getting frustrated and aggressive because of my behavior. Then, you know, we carry that around everywhere we go. And next thing you know, I mean, sooner or later something is going to happen. I wanted to ask you too, John. When I first read David Grossman's On Combat and on Killing, the models that he set out for the adrenal curve, he set out it was white, yellow, orange, and then red, gray, and black.
Right.
And I remember when I first looked at his model of how he had set that up, I immediately said, well, that's a great model to also gauge the awareness level. And so the sort of scale that I've been working on in terms of awareness for a while has been in step with the one that Grossman and Siddle used in those books, in that I think of white being just blissfully unaware. Your nose is buried in your phone and you're about to walk off a cliff, you know, or you're half asleep, literally, you know. Yellow is what we should normally walk around in every day, is just being, you know, aware enough to do what we do. Are comfortable when we're in our house. You know, we might bang our toe against something, but we're aware. Orange is what happens when you go out in the world and you start driving. You got to cross a street. You need to bring that extra level of, okay, let's pay attention. Let's take our steps. Let's be deliberate. Red is, uh-oh, there's danger, and it's upon us, and we're reacting to that danger. And then gray and black correspond to the perceptual distortion element of it. You know,
right.
the tachypsychia, you know, all of the bag of perceptual distortion that comes along with that, because those perceptual distortions are not just a biological phenomena, they're a psychological phenomena as well. And so when we're in gray, we're in a place where, you know what, I've been in this too long, and the very fact that I'm in it and say I'm taking damage, or I'm being presented with changing circumstances that are moving faster than I can calculate them or take them into account, that's where you're operating in that severely, you know, impaired. You're starting to lose your judgment and fall behind the reaction curve, and you just can't respond. And then black would be the situation of your awareness faculties are starting to shut down. It could be because you're bleeding out. It could be because you're just literally so physically exhausted that you can't actually process any information anymore. But that's that final sort of shutdown phase. And that's the model that I've been working on for a number of years, just because the first time that I looked at that model, I thought it corresponded very nicely.
That's a great model. And when I read it years ago, when I read that book from Colonel Grossman, he hits it right on the head. I mean, being in those situations several times, I could fully see every time you explained that where you would wind up, you know, the mindset you would have at that point. Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense, you know, with especially with the gray area, with you know, like you said, with everything starting to slow down, things are they're going a little faster. You feel like you're slowing down. It does change a little bit from what Cooper says. Okay?
Yes.
I think what Colonel Grossman did was he bumped it up a little bit more. Each color was just bumped up into the next step, basically, and then with the gray, which I like that. I like the area, the gray level, because it makes sense. It really makes sense as to where you are when you're. It's kind of hard for me to explain it when you're in that type of situation for real, and you're in that gray mode. Things do act very strangely back and forth, where you feel like you're moving slowly, everybody else is at regular speed, okay, and it's kind of hard to comprehend at that time, you know, when you're going through it. So it's very important for people to understand that area there. You know, we can go from white all the way up to black, but it's very important for people to understand that gray area and where they are with their feelings, where their brain sets and where their body sits in that situation. It's very important for them to understand that.
Yeah, I like having a slightly bigger continuum to work on. I think it allows for a greater expression of some of those transitionary stages.
Sure.
You know, I think I find it's a more accurate way, at least from my experience, of being someone who's experienced those levels also. It speaks to me because it gives me a little more room to sort of enter some things that I think might get left out of the Cooper model, maybe for the sake of simplicity or ease of presentation.
Sure.
But I prefer a model that is just a little larger.
Sure.
Both models are excellent because, of course, a model's purpose is to kind of help you understand and give you hooks to hang experience and knowledge on, so you can make sense of it and analyze it in the time.
All models are useful, even if they're really terrible. They give you into what you shouldn't do. All models are useful, but none of them are true. They're just abstract ideas that we're trying to use in order to convey information of our own experiences to other people, or assimilate other people's experiences into our world.
Yeah. In terms of making it useful for our viewers, I'd like to kind of get back to that transition thing, because a lot of people, the mistake they make with awareness is not knowing when to transition from white to yellow and not knowing when to transition from yellow to white. Not understanding that wandering around texting is a bad idea. For example, when I present the color codes, I talk about the two situations where I've been in public where it was appropriate for me to be in a condition white. One of them was the same martial arts event that I met John at, where I was in a public park surrounded by 100 badasses, including cops. And all the badasses around me were good guys. That was a place that I was willing. I was the unarmed junior student in that particular group. I could go off duty. I was taken care of. The other one was a rafting trip I was on the Grand Canyon, where we're all introducing each other on the first day. And there's 5 people who are experienced raft guides with more than 10 years experience each, a former Navy SEAL, and 3 doctors, including a trauma surgeon. I'm off duty. I can totally relax in those circumstances. But beyond that, like John said, if you leave the house, condition yellow is the most appropriate. The same level of kind of mellow, reflexive awareness that you have when you're driving, or that you should have when you're driving. And so I think this is a place to talk about what not to do, because I think the failing that a lot of folks have, and I'm guilty of it, we're all guilty of it, when we end up in condition white when we're out in the world, is because there's something else we're focusing on, like texting, like wool gathering. What are some of the other things? Yes, the enemy in many ways. But what are some of the other things you've observed or heard about that have led us to...
Can I just jump in here real quick?
Yeah.
Something that I mentioned a couple episodes ago that has just been something that's come up in my research the last couple months. I watch a lot of video, a lot of CCTV, police video, privately filmed video, and one of the things that just kind of came to my attention all of a sudden was I was watching a lot of road rage instances where the vehicles had come to a stop, and the aggressor would get out of the car and approach the other vehicle and then open their door and start striking the person or trying to drag them out of the car. And in every instance, I wondered, why the hell does that person have their door unlocked? Then I watched a couple videos where it was very, very clear that the driver, the victim, was shocked that the door was actually unlocked. And it struck me there was an intuitive thing of like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And I realized what it was I examined this. Many, many of our cars now have an automatic feature that they come with that when you shift the car into park, all of the doors unlock. It's in the programmable settings of most cars, I think, made after 2003, 2004. And you can set it so that your doors don't unlock or that the front ones unlock. I mean, nicer cars have nicer sort of options on it, but I've had several cars now, Hondas and Acuras, where that's the case, and I know that's the case in a lot of other vehicles. So as a safety preventative measure, I would say to most people that if you are at all concerned about it or makes sense to you, it's going to inconvenience you slightly, because when you shift the car into park, then you can't just open the door. You have to unlock the doors before you step out. But training yourself to just deal with that small inconvenience is actually going to play a big dividend should you ever be in a situation where in a road rage instance somebody runs you off the road and then approaches and tries to yank your door open, because they won't be able to, and you won't be surprised when the door is unlocked and they yank it open and start attacking you. So this is something that we've looked at, we've just discussed in our school, and we've done a little bit of stuff around it, but it's just something that I've noticed as a quick, easy way to bring your awareness to something that we all do quite a lot of, and that can just make a very big difference between you getting ambushed where you thought you were in the safety of your car or not.
That puts me in mind of back in the 90s, there was a situation where, and I'm sure you encountered these, John, where the carjacker would position himself to take advantage of the fact that your key fob unlocked all the doors. So as you unlocked your car, they'd just slide in the passenger side.
Yes. A lot of times, though, carjackings will take place. Well, there's several different tactics that they would use. Okay, one is the bump from behind in another vehicle with another vehicle. The other is just running up to the car door and yanking that car door open, which goes back to what Richard was saying. The key fob, I know on my truck, for me, I have a 2013 Ford F-150, and I know I have to hit that key fob 4 times for 4 doors to open up. You
Nice.
know, and when I get into the truck and I close the door, my doors lock, and when I start it up and put it in gear, they're locked.
Good.
I agree with what Richard's saying about that. And if your vehicle does have that feature, that's great. It's just that we have to be able to do a little bit of training with that and understand that we have to get used to that, and be able to understand that, okay, I have to unlock my doors every time, because if the car does if you get into a wreck and I've got to get out of the car quickly, something happens with inside the vehicle that I have to get out quickly, I have to be able to unlock that car door and get out. So, as long as we understand, and how many people really do this? How many people would take the time to make that effort to switch the car locks that way, but then go ahead and understand that I have to unlock them every time? Now do it under the pressure of something happening. You're in a wreck, and now I've got to get out of my car rapidly. I got to get out as fast, and we're pulling on the door, and it's something as simple as hitting a switch to unlock that door. And under that pressure, the adrenaline, we forget to do that. Whereas a daily occurrence, we're just as
right. And the overall point that you make there, John, that anything that you do as a preventative measure, as a palliative measure, everything has a benefit and has a drawback.
Absolutely.
And so in this instance, you're going to have a benefit, but then there is this drawback. And you might have somebody who says, I've never been attacked. I live in a very safe neighborhood. There's no carjackings around here. I only take my car here and here, and I'm a very defensive driver. The chance that I might have somebody else hit me and be in a wreck and need to get out of the car and not be able to get out of the car is probably a greater risk for me, statistically, than that I'm going to be carjacked. And so I'm going to leave my doors set this way because I'd rather be able to get out of the car quickly in the case of a wreck than worry about somebody yanking my car door open. And that's a very legitimate way to examine that. The important thing is to actually do the examination.
Yes.
And put the thought into what makes more sense for me to do, and then you've made a decision, be aware of it, and know that, hey, you know what, I might need to leave my car in neutral, right, or in reverse while the vehicles are stopped, and and in order to keep the doors locked, or put into park and then lock the doors again.
Yeah.
But you're always going to have to make that trade-off one way or another.
Absolutely.
And then one of the points I think John made there was also the importance of drilling and training, that whatever the setting you have on your car, practice getting out of the car in the way that will get you out of the car. If your car unlocks when you put it in a park, you can just step out, but if you set it so that it's locked by default, practice under stress, practice running drills with your family for different situations so it is closer to second nature. And that gets kind of the theme today, the awareness theme, those transitions from white to yellow, transitions from yellow to orange. What are some drills we know? What are some ways to practice? What are some ways to think about awareness by ourselves and with our families that can help us stay in condition yellow out in the world and recognize those threats that should bring us up to condition orange? John, you explained a really great one to me that you do in a mall back in the day that's still one of my favorites.
Yeah, I mean, in the mall, because there's a lot of people there and it's busy, a lot of people coming and going. We'll go to the mall. I'll go with Lee. We'll sit there. She'll be shopping, and she'll go into a store, and I'll sit outside the store, and I'll grab a cup of coffee, and I'll just watch people, and I watch to see what their level of awareness is, and especially around the holidays, people are in a hurry. First of all, we drive to the mall, right? We get there and it's packed. The parking lot is packed. And there's not a lot of places to park. So we wind up parking way out in the back 40 of the parking lot, or way up top of the parking garage. We go shopping. We get involved with what we're doing in there. When we got there, it was daylight. Now it's dark. So now we just walked into a different atmosphere when we're leaving. Plus our hands are full with packages. So we could be a potential victim there. So what I do is when I go to the mall, I watch people. I watch to see what their level of awareness is. And when I watch them, I look at them and I look for an escape route. And I play the role of a bad guy. And I'll watch people. And I'll say, okay, I see this woman. She's got her hands full with packages, but she's window shopping right now. She's totally oblivious to what's going on around her. I can take this woman. I see the doorway that goes out into a parking lot, or it goes down into a long hallway of the mall. It goes out to the back 40 parking lot. I can hit her, take her purse, and be out that door before anybody realizes what happens. And I can filter her into the crowd in the parking lot. And then you turn around and you say, you freeze frame that, and you say to these people in the freeze frame, what just happened? Give me a description of the guy that just did this. Not too many people are going to be able to give a very clear description. Okay? The victim herself won't be able to, because she was just ambushed. Okay? And it happened so fast. So I look at this and I try to look at it in the mind of a criminal who wants to, because criminals don't want to get caught. They don't want to be seen. They want to hit hard and fast, and they want to be gone. So when I watch these people, I watch their awareness level. I watch where they situate themselves. Are they alone? Are they with someone else? Do they have any type of injury or any type of handicap? Okay, because criminals have a tendency of interviewing us, one from afar, and they'll watch us from a distance, and they'll look exactly for that. Are this person's hands full? Is he alone or is she alone? If they're with someone, who are they with? Is it a husband? Is it a friend? Is it a girlfriend? Is it another female? Is it a child? Is it somebody that doesn't look like they want to intervene? Okay? And then from there, it's when I can do the deed, when I can do my plan. I have a plan. I go there for a reason. I may have a plan A, but I may not have a plan B, okay, if something goes wrong. The second thing is they may want to interview you close up. Richard, you're parked in your car on a city street. You get out, and there's a little toll thing where you got to put your money in to pay for your parking space. What do? You reach in your back pocket, you pull out your wallet, taking money out to feed the meter. I'm on the street, I walk up to you, I say, sir, can I borrow a quarter? Or do you have $1 you can lend me? Or you can give me? I don't want the $1. I don't want the quarter. I want your wallet. And same thing with a woman. But what do? I don't want her purse. I don't want her wallet. I want her purse. I don't want the money. I'll get the money later. But what's the first thing we do when we pull our wallet out of our back pocket to take money out? We look down at it. We take our eyes off of the bad guy or the potential bad guy. And that's when the ambush happens. Okay? So that awareness, and we have, and Tony Blauer said this in a class I was with. You get a bad meal at a restaurant. How many people will turn around and send that meal back? Steak's not cooked. Not many.
Yeah.
Not many.
Right? The steak's not cooked was the way I wanted it. Oh, I don't want the hassle. I'll keep it. I'll eat it. It's okay. Same thing here. All right, I'll give you the $1. I'll give you the quarter. Just, go away. And when we look down, bam, the ambush happens. And can we as a victim at that point identify who the bad guy was? So what I tell people is take a couple steps back, put your hands up in front of you. In Tony Blauer's words, in that nonviolent posture, my hands are up. Sir, please step back away from me. I don't have any money to give you. And use some decent words. We don't have to chest bump. We don't have to, use the testosterone level.
Sure.
But just nice words, sir. Look, please back up. I don't have any money for you. I have to go. But be aware. Be aware of your surroundings.
The best course that I have been through in terms of that negotiating phase, you're in your nonviolent posture, you're in your negotiator stance, and you're giving clear commands about what you expect to happen. It may be that the person just recognizes that you're not a soft target and they leave you alone. It may be that they actually had no ill intent initially, but when you respond that way, it kind of irks them and it makes them a little more verbally aggressive or assertive. That space inside of there where you actually do the verbal de-escalation. The best work, I went through the law enforcement week-long training in George Thompson's verbal judo system a number of years ago.
Right.
And I think it was some of the best work that I ever did. It was one of the best classes because you think about that space of, well, okay, if the guy continues coming at me and encroaches upon my space or becomes aggressive or violent, now we're into physical confrontation or escape and evasion.
Right.
But we've transitioned. Once again, it's in that transition phase between the initial contact, the establishment then of the boundary, and the verbal de-escalation that happens in there. Mm-hmm. That realm of verbal de-escalation is not one that there's a lot of training out there for. Very few people do it. If they do it, it's very minimal. And you don't have people who are skilled woofers who can present them with multiple different changes of tactic and different approaches and different attacks and this sort of a thing. It's an area of the training that I think is really underserved in the industry, and mm-hmm. that there is some good information out there. But I wanted to get maybe your thoughts on how you do some things just in that realm of verbal de-escalation between the time between initial contact and some sort of physical confrontation or the need to make the decision to flee In that space there, what do you use in terms of training your students, or what have you been through that you found helpful?
Absolutely. I've been through, I've been through Thompson's verbal judo. I also, the man who pretty much brought me up in training law enforcement, Gary Klugowitz.
Oh yes, he worked with Doc Thompson, right?
Yes. And Gary and I are friends, and I've worked with Gary quite a bit in teaching law enforcement. And all of Gary's courses, he had a block on verbal de-escalation, and being able to, and you know, the hands come up and in that nonviolent posture, and we talk about using choice speech, calming words, and in the phrase from Roadhouse, be nice until it's time not to be nice, and then be nice again. You know, and in law enforcement, in my years in law enforcement, my 28 years being a police officer, that was our biggest hit, was working in that zone of de-escalation, because it was either we're not going to come up to you, or if we do and something is said and the fuse is lit, then we're going full tilt and you're going to jail. But we have to have that fine line in between. So it would be, we would come up into that nonviolent posture and use choice speech, not to fire this person up as best as possible, and then try to use choice speech to calm them down, and then work from there. Now, if something fired off, which I've been in situations where somebody went very docile, and then they hit the afterburners, and they just fired up and came right at me. Well, then, then at that point, when it comes into a physical altercation, then it's defend. We have to defend ourselves. You know, what is the bigger picture, and what is the atmosphere that I'm in? Am I in a street where I'm surrounded by people, where I have a lot of people that are waiting to see what's going to happen, and I don't have any friendly people around me? So yeah, at that point in time, I've got to get out of there. You know, and that's when the fight or flight thing comes in. I'm out of there. I'm gone. You know, but if I'm forced to go into a defensive mode, then, like I tell my people, then you have to understand what you're going to get into, what you're going to be, how do you train, you know, and are you using everything as well as possible not to fight. But if you have to fight, understand what you have to do.
And that's a point, actually, that I think I've seen happen in a lot of different systems that I've been through, and a way that I've seen a lot of self-defense taught, is much of it is designed for law enforcement. And that's great, but if you're looking to translate that to the average civilian, you have certain elements that are very, very good, and then certain elements that are, you know, as a civilian, you don't have a duty to act. It's not your job to bring this person into compliance, or save maybe potential other people around that he might hurt, you know, or let him escape. You're not going to chase him down. You're not going to try to bring him into compliance.
I'd even say that as a parent, you have the exact opposite duty.
I agree completely.
Go home to your children.
Yes, and so I mean, I always make that point of saying, you know, your strategy, your grand strategy, is get to safety safely, with as little damage to yourself as possible. That is your meta objective, and anything that you do in terms of physical confrontation, de-escalation, all of that is just going to be in service of that. It may be that you have to use lethal force in order to get to safety safely. That's a possibility. But it's also a possibility that you get chased 8 blocks and think you're going to die and end up lost and maybe in a position where you might get further attacked in another place, but you escape that situation. Could be then into another worse situation. Who knows? But the point is, get to safety safely. And I find that often in much of the civilian training that I've seen, they're trying to port a lot of the LE duty to act techniques and approaches mindset to civilians. And I think that that's one of the things that I've seen that I sometimes disagree with, and I kind of have to remind my students too sometimes of, hey, that was a lot of great information, but just remember, your job is not to get the guy prone and wait for the authorities to arrive. Your job is to get to safety safely.
No, I you know, coming from a law enforcement background, I couldn't agree with you more. You know, and that's, I talk to my people all the time, and it's, you know, look, if you're forced into something, you have no escape route, and you have to fight for your life. Okay, I understand that, but your main objective is to get out of there, get to a safe area, get the police on the phone, and get them to come to where you are to help rescue you. It is not your duty to be taking anybody down to the ground and kneeling on them and keeping them there, because you don't, number one, it's not your job. Two, if you try to do that and you're in a hostile area, believe me, it's not going to be a good thing, because I've done it in full uniform and it still wasn't a good thing in some of the areas that I worked in. So a civilian they have no need to be doing that. I feel that if people are teaching their students to do this, it's really going to put their students in jeopardy.
So you mentioned a couple things there, John, about, you know, we've talked about awareness of yourself, what condition are you in, we've talked about awareness of the bad guy with the interview stuff, but you've also kind of touched on awareness of environment. And that's everything from where's the traffic to what in the environment, what is the crowd like? Are they likely to help me? Are they likely to help the other person? What kind of improvised weapons are around? Is there a drink that I could throw in someone's face? Is there a fire extinguisher I could pick up? Is there a table or a car or a dumpster I could just interpose between myself and this other person to give me that extra second of reaction time? And that environmental awareness is something that A, a lot of people don't pay attention to, and B, is also just very underserved in the training I've seen. Mm-hmm. So what are some cues on environmental awareness that we've become aware of that we can share?
You know, with your environment, just take a look around at any place you can imagine yourself being. Okay, look where you are right now. You know, like I said earlier, if somebody breaks into your place right now and attacks you with a machete, what do you have at your disposal right now? And I see you looking around. So what do you have at your disposal right now to gain you that extra time to get to an improvised weapon, to get to one of your weapons that you use in your martial arts, or to escape? You know, when I do my training with my people, I you know, especially I key on the blade, and I always put my people in a predicament where the person with the blade stands between them and the exit. First thing I need to do is I need to get something in between me and this person to give me that extra time, like you said. And then I got to be looking for the exit. I need to be looking for something someplace to go to get out of there quickly. If I have to, and I may have to, 90% of the time, improvised weapons. Okay, and what do you have right now in your home as an improvised weapon that you can use? Okay, it doesn't have to be, you know, like when I fly, I carry a briefcase. I carry some pens. I carry a magazine that I can roll up and use as a baton. Okay, I may never read that magazine, but it's an instrument that I can use, and I can work with it in a close quarter area. And if I have to go to another level of force, I have pens, I have writing instruments, but I have everything with me that I can read, I can write with, but I can turn them into an improvised weapon at a moment's notice. But the awareness of where I am at that time also, okay, is going to be a key point. I could be in a restaurant. Me, personally, I sit with my back against the wall. I know where that front door is, and I see people coming in. I know where the kitchen is. What's in the kitchen of a restaurant? What's in your kitchen right now?
Knives and fire.
Absolutely. Okay? So there you go. So, but you have access to it, right?
Mm.
So does the bad guy. Okay? So you have to understand, well, you know, I'm always armed. I always carry a handgun. So when I'm doing something, if I get into a confrontation, I have to be really careful because there is a handgun on scene. Okay, there's always going to be a handgun in that confrontation. So with me, avoidance is a big thing. Okay, so I'm standing on a platform waiting for the train. I get into a confrontation. How close do I want to be to the end of that platform when I'm in a confrontation with this individual? Because I don't want to wind up down on the tracks. Okay, a lot of techniques. You know, we talk about martial arts and self-defense. A lot of people work techniques with their strong side all the time. It's their favorite side, right? How many of us train our people to work their support side due to an environmental thing that may be happening to them at that time? Okay? Mm-hmm. So we have to really be aware of our environment. Neighborhoods. If we get lost in a neighborhood and we're driving, how do we get out of there? Have you used your GPS in your vehicles lately? Every time I use it, I get lost for some reason. Okay, and it's like, why do I even use this thing? You know, so it's a thing where you have to be aware of your surroundings. When I sit at a traffic light, my head is on that swivel. I'm looking. You know, so restaurants, neighborhoods, public transportation. Being aware of who's riding on that train, who's riding on that bus, the aircraft you may be sitting on, who are you sitting around, what seats do you purchase when you do fly. I always get an aisle seat because I know I can get up and I can move if I need to. Mm-hmm. So your environment you have to be aware of that area. You have to be aware of where you're going to be when something goes bad. And Gary Klugowitz, again, we talked about when-then thinking. When-then thinking. Not if it happens, then I'm going to do this. But when it happens, then I'm going to do this. And always have a plan. Always have a plan. When I teach my home invasion courses here, I ask people, what is your plan for the environment you're in right now? Most of them don't have a plan. Mm.
That's true. We have a plan. Jason, do you have a plan?
Yeah.
I would imagine.
And you know, this is an interesting thing about some pushback that I sometimes get on the awareness discussion is that having the plan, thinking those thoughts, drilling and teaching them to your kids is unpleasant.
Yeah.
And to the point John made earlier on in the show about how you're accused of becoming paranoid. Or people are afraid that, well, I don't want to be thinking about that all the time. I'll be paranoid.
Right.
And the fact that actually you end up thinking about those things less once you have the plan together. You worry about those things less once you have that plan in place, once you've drilled enough that you've kind of considered it. And you're actually less likely to be paranoid and less likely to be in a confrontation if you've put those things in place and kind of put them to bed. It's it's that paradox about the badass in the room is the least likely to get into a fight. It's part of that same continuum. Mm-hmm. You know.
And not only having that plan, not only having a plan put together for your family, but how often do you drill that plan? Mm-hmm. Okay? It's nice to have a plan. Okay, Lee, when somebody kicks in the front door, I'm going for the handgun. You're going for the cell phone, and you're going to be in the closet, in the walk-in closet in the back corner, seated with your handgun, and on the phone, 911, telling the police what's going on, and please tell the police that I'm armed and what I'm wearing. Okay?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
That's a great point. I mean, that's pretty much our plan. Is we have an alarm on our house, mm-hmm. and if that alarm goes off, my wife goes across the hall to my daughter's rooms. She gets my daughters. brings them to our room, does exactly that. She's got the phone with her. She's on 911. I've got a Mossberg semi-auto shotgun, and I take up station at the top of the stairs. And my only job is I'm not letting anything come up those stairs. You can ransack my house. You can take my big screen. You can take my everything that's in the kitchen. You can take my office. You can have whatever you want. I'm not coming down those stairs. But if you try to take 1 foot on those stairs, I'm going to kill you.
Sure.
And that's our plan. But I'm not going to walk. I'm not going to go put myself in there. You know, I've got insurance on everything else, and I know that we got the phone upstairs and the police are on the way. You show your face down at the bottom of those stairs, you're in trouble. But other than that, take whatever you want, and I'll deal with it later. And if I never have to see your face during the whole thing, all the better.
Absolutely.
That's my thought. You know,
that's a plan, man. You know.
Yeah. We have a 1-story ranch house. Not here. We're in an apartment on the 10th floor. Whole different plan here. But at home, 1-story rambling ranch house with 3 different patio doors and 2 other doors. The place is a sieve, right? But the plan is, until we had the baby, if somebody's in, everybody out. There's an exit within 5 feet of you at all times. We reconnoiter over the neighbor's house, or reconvene at the neighbor's house. Since we had the baby, my job has been altered slightly to rush into the baby's room, grab him, and go out his window.
Mm-hmm.
But because we're not on a 2nd floor house, and because we are in a fairly tight neighborhood where we know some of the neighbors, yeah, our plan is just leave. There's many ways, you know.
That's
so many exits.
Yeah, and Richard, that's a great plan. You know, I think the same way, because you do live in a 2-story home, and you're up on that 2nd level. You have the benefit of the elevated level there and a choke point of the stairwell, right?
Yeah.
So that's a perfect area to be in, and you're absolutely right. And in teaching this, and I'm sitting in a 2,000 square foot simunition house that I built, where I teach. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath house where, and I have 15 closed circuit cameras in here for video. And when I bring my students in here and they want to learn this in-home self-defense, a lot of them say, well, I'm going to leave the bedroom, I'm going to go out and I'm going to search for them. Well, why would you want to do that?
Exactly.
You never want to do that. Fix a standard point where you're going to fight from, and like you say, when they step on that stairway to come up, they're done. My thing is, you step through that threshold of the doorway, and we used to call it the fatal funnel in our SWAT days. You frame yourself in that doorway coming into the bedroom, you're done.
Yeah.
You know, and there's no reason for you to have to leave your secure point to go out and search for bad guys. Number one, yeah, I understand you know your house, but you know what? You don't know how many are out there.
And you don't necessarily know where he is exactly either.
Absolutely. So good plan, excellent plan. You know, you got the high ground, and the kids are.
Just because of the way the house is laid out, I have the most superior position that I could take up. You know, I have an elevated position. I have a fatal funnel. I've got the kids put away in the area that has the most the greatest concentration of mass between me and any errant rounds that might come out of the chamber, and them potentially as well. So that's something else that's taken into account is we could leave them in their rooms, or they could meet in one of the other girls' rooms, but they're only one wall away from where the stairwell is. So she takes them across to our room, where an errant round would have to go through significantly much more wood and drywall and potentially furniture and things if that were to happen. And that's something we took into account when we made that decision too.
Sure.
I think it's why Lee's sitting down in the closet in your plan, right, John?
Yes, Lee's in the closet. She's in the back of the closet. Now I have 4 dogs, and I have an alarm system. Okay, so and I have many firearms. So when something does happen, she goes into the closet with a gun, and she's on the phone, and I'm taking up that defensive position. The other thing that I tell people all the time, and this is not only for inside the home in a situation like this, but and when I tell people this, I always picture myself walking through a parking lot into a shopping center or something where someone comes up to rob us and they're armed, and something happens where, God forbid, I get my handgun out there, got their handgun, and we shoot each other. And I'm with Lee, and I tell her, run, get away. But the last thing you want to do is come to me if I'm down, because now you just identified yourself, and you could be a potential victim also. So I always tell her, get to a safe area on the phone, and get help there. Never come back to me, because if the bad guy is still there, you're going to draw some problems from him if you come back to approach me. So that's another thing we discuss for the in-home defense also.
And you put all that together, different families, different configurations, and the real takeaway for our viewers is have a plan. Think about things like that. About, is your duty to flee? Is your duty to stay? What does a child do if the situation gets out of hand? My oldest job, if he's alone, is to run in a straight line until he finds a convenience store, and then just call the cops from there. Because most urban areas, if you run in a straight line long enough, you will find one, and they're relatively safe.
Right.
And then I can also tell the police after the situation, well, he's probably in a convenience store somewhere within a mile of here.
Right.
If he's with the little one, his job is to grab that little one and run like hell. And my job is to go with him if I can, or to buy time. But whatever your family is, whatever your skill level is, whatever your level of training is, a realistic plan that you talk about and practice, just like you do your fire drill at home. Because we all have a fire drill, right?
Absolutely.
Right?
We do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And to treat it the same way. And we're running on to our hour, but there's one other point that is really important. Has been one that's concerned me a lot. So let's posit there's a parent, a father or mother, who's listened to this program, who's followed all the advice, has read all the books we've suggested, read the other 100 books we haven't, has a plan, has reasonable situational awareness, and it's day 11 of a vacation. And I mean, there's levels of tired, right? There's tired, there's shift work tired, there's grad student tired, there's the first 6 months of having a baby tired, and then there's parents near the end of a vacation tired. There's a whole nother level of tired. When you are that exhausted, when you are that distracted, when it's hot and everything's going on, and you come to this from a law enforcement situation where shift work is just the name of the game, and 18-hour shifts where you're on a razor's edge sometimes the entire time is just part of life. Richard's a parent like myself. What are some things we can do when we're at that point, when we're that compromised, to remain alert and aware of our environment, of things that might be an interview, of safety, of ourselves? What are some things we can do to stay in that code yellow when our whole body is probably technically in code gray because we're so tired?
Breathe. Take a moment. Take a big, deep breath. And think about what matters. Okay? I know we go on family vacations a lot, and we've got a whole string of family members that go from little kids all the way up to adults. And it's go, 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 go. And when it gets to that point of being so exhausted and we start thinking about other things. We just want to sleep. We just want to get back to the hotel. We just want to go here or there. Take a moment. Stop. Look around at what you're dealing with. Look at your kids. Look at your wife. Take a breath. That's what matters. That's what matters. And then settle everything down, get everybody else settled down, and get your plan back in order. If you're going to continue to where you want to go, then understand. Get the mindset that, look, we're going to finish this little excursion, And I still have to be on my game, thinking all the time, being on point. Okay, being on point. Every time I went out, I did over 1,000 search warrants in my years in SWAT. Okay, going through the door, and every time when I was on point, I had to have my mind clear. I had to have my head in the game. You've got kids. Richard's got kids. You got to be on point. You got to be in the game. Take that breath. Settle down. Take a good overall picture of what you're dealing with, and make that choice. If we're going to go, or we're going to finish, or we're going to pull a timeout, and we're going back to the hotel, and we're going to rest. Whichever decision you make, everybody's got to be on that point with you. And since you're the commander of the family, you make that decision. And of course, well, you're really not the commander. I think we all know that everybody, you know. So you check in with the boss and you make a decision and say, okay, this is what we have to do. But you have to be aware. Your awareness can never be dropped. Okay, whether you're in your area where you are now in Malaysia, or I'm up in Disney World in Orlando. Okay, we still have to be aware. We still have to be on point.
Excellent. Richard, do you have any insights as well? You're muted.
Just a few things that have been helpful to me over the years. One of them is make use of the legal chemical substances at your disposal. You have caffeine is a very, very powerful drug, and our ability to boost our capacity to stay awake above and beyond really what our body's level to do so is. There's lots of ways that you can plan for that by by using different substances. I have prescription for Adderall that I've used for almost my whole life for ADD, and it's that if I don't take it, then I know a difference. And there might be times when I'm like, you know what, the next couple hours I need an extra awareness, and normally I wouldn't take one, but then I'll be like, you know what, I'm going to take it, and it helps me stay awake and alert. Or I'm going to drink those 3 cups of coffee that I normally wouldn't because it's after 5, but you know what, I need to be all here for this. The other is take your breaks when you know you need them. Don't extend yourself too far. Don't be afraid to stop and reassess regularly and make changes in the plan if needed. And then the other one is a lot of times you can just put yourself in safer situations by going longer routes. And it's going to take you a little longer to get there, but you're going to be in well-lit, clean, much more manageable circumstances or situations than potential other routes. And so many, many times in my travels, particularly abroad, it's like we can go this way and be there in 10 minutes. Or we can go this way and be there in 25, but the potential for us to run into trouble, particularly if we're tired or we're disoriented or we're not sure where we are, we're going to go a little bit longer, more brightly lit path and just try to, cut down the chance that something that is going to require all of that attention will happen. So those are just a few things that I found over the years.
It sounds like in both cases that this idea of a reset button, where you realize, I'm compromised. Take a minute, as John says, breathe, look at your kids, look at your wife, remember why you're there, remember what, your reasons for being in that spot, and in many cases with family, your reasons for living entirely. And just, you look at them, you breathe, you remind yourself what's important. Maybe you sit down at a coffee shop and throw some more caffeine in you. Or if the situation is more stress and exhaustion, you have a nice cup of tea and just kind of breathe and look at the flowers or whatever. But that reset button, where you kind of tighten in your focus but maintain an awareness, seems like a good plan. And then what you were talking about, that very last thing about the longer path is sometimes a safer path. When planning a family excursion, I think a lot of us, I know that I do, I get really excited and maybe plan too much. And that gets back to planning and awareness and the tactical considerations, where don't pack too much into a trip. Don't try to do so much that you end up exhausting yourself or getting stubborn. This trip that I mentioned to both of you, that I actually get on the plane tonight to go to India for 2 weeks, my original plan was, we're going to go to Nepal and India and Bangladesh and Myanmar, and we're going to see all these things. And then we looked at the 2 weeks. It was like, well, we're going to go to India, and we're going to go to here and here and here. And then we looked at that. And we're like, well, we're going to go to this part of India and see these 3 things and spend 2 or 3 days at each and have a rest day here and here and here.
There you go.
Because that's realistic. And, you know, when you're with a family especially, a lot of parents that I've talked to about family safety, about travel safety, their international travels, their big travels happened before when they were in their 20s and by themselves or with a significant other. And the amount of energy reserves you have when you're 23 and the amount of energy that travel requires when you're 23 and don't have children with you is just an entirely different ballgame from traveling in your 40s with the responsibilities of 2 children and negotiating the often complex relationship you have with your wife while traveling. It takes so much more energy, and you don't have as much energy. And so you often have that itinerary that you could have managed in your 20s that's just utterly ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that, again, gets back to, I think, one of the main themes here of having a plan that's realistic, that you've thought about, and then being aware of yourself and how that plan's interacting with reality.
Absolutely.
Of always being ready to change the plan if necessary. How many times do you find yourself, you're traveling and you're supposed to do this thing. It's 5 o'clock. We're supposed to be here and we're supposed to go do that thing, but that thing was something that involves walking around or climbing something for another couple hours, and you've just been through a giant thing. Everybody's hungry. Everybody's tired. Maybe we're a little banged up, and you're going, is it the best thing to go do that right now? But no, we have to do this. Well, no, you don't. You could not do it, or you could find a way to substitute it another time, or maybe it is that that's just the way it is and you don't get to do that thing, but you have to err on the side of caution and safety. That's oftentimes, so having a plan is great, observing that plan and how it's working, obviously, but being willing to change the plan to the dictates of what reality is telling you is also a big part of that, I think.
And there's an important caveat to that, which is, because a lot of folks who don't like the idea of planning, the more spontaneous people, they'll look at what you just said, which is absolutely true, and take that as an excuse to say, well, I'm just going to change the plan, so I might as well not plan.
Right.
The only thing worse than having to change your plan is not having a plan to change. It's always better to have a plan you alter. Mm-hmm. Well, we are running out of time, so is there any last thoughts on awareness and safety that you'd like to share with the class there, John, before we sign off for the day?
No, it's just, keep your head on a swivel. Be aware of everything that's going on around you. When I'm walking down the street and somebody's approaching me, I look at them and I greet them. Makes me the nice guy, but I also scan them. And I say to myself, I got a guy in front of me, short hair, white male, wearing a blue T-shirt with white lettering on the front, and I continue to walk, but as I'm passing him, I look at him and I greet him and I let him know I'm aware he's there, and it makes me the better person, and it keeps me aware at the same time. So yeah, just being aware of everything that's going on around you. The color codes you can work on your own. You can find them in Grossman's book, or you can go online and look it up and research it and practice it on your own. You don't have to be an expert in order to learn this, in order to be able to put it to work for you in your personal life.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, John. I really appreciate it. Real quick, you have a website that people can go to find out about how to take some of your classes?
Yes, I do. It's www.progressiveselfdefensesystems with an S on the end, .com. progressiveselfdefensesystems.com. I'm located in Boca Raton, Florida, and my number is 561-262-7840.
Excellent.
That's great, John. I would love to. I'd love to come down and play with some of those toys. I'm looking behind you at the setup that you have there, and I'm going, oh man, I want to go play.
Hey, you're welcome down anytime, Richard.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate you being here today and sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you. It was great talking with both of you. Appreciate it.
And thank everybody for checking in. I hope this was useful. And tune in next time. And if you haven't seen any of the other episodes, check out our backlog. This is our 5th episode. We have a little bit of good advice in some of the other ones as well. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time. Richard, you want to sign us out?
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us, everyone. And remember, you are stronger than you think you are.